A guy waited in line for almost 45 minutes. When it was finally his turn, the waitress said no and didn't serve him. He was really puzzled about why she did that. He got frustrated and left, but later, he went back to see what would happen next. The restaurant had a really long line, and as Carl Baker waited, he got even hungrier. When he finally reached the front of the line, he was really hungry. Little did he know that something would happen to make him wait even longer for his food. Once he finally reached the front of the line, Carl greeted the cashier politely and started to get ready to make his order. However, she did not respond to him kindly. Carl thought that perhaps she wasn't having such a good day, and he continued to be friendly toward her. When Carl finally told her what he'd like to order, he was surprised to hear that the dish he wanted was not available. Even though he was disappointed, he decided to opt for another meal instead. When he gave her his order, she said that none of the options were available. Carl immediately became both confused and frustrated. When Carl tried to understand what was going on, the waitress simply rolled her eyes at him. He tried to tell her off, but she told him that he had to leave immediately. Despite the waitress insisting that he had to leave, Carl stood his ground and demanded to speak to the woman's manager. The manager showed up and told Carl that he was holding up the rest of the line. Carl was slowly starting to realize why the restaurant workers were acting the way they were towards him. He tried to explain to the manager what had happened, but her reaction caught him off guard. While Carl was trying to explain the situation, a cook came out from the back toward the register to inform the manager of something. When speaking to the manager, the cook pointed at Carl and said that he should be removed from the restaurant and that she was not willing to serve him. The manager laughed in response. Carl was frustrated by the fact that nobody was listening to him and that the manager was not taking his complaint seriously. At this point, Carl felt that he had had enough. He was not going to be nice and polite anymore. His next move surprised everyone there. The manager looked at him coldly and arrogantly told him that she did not have to explain herself to anyone and that he had to leave the establishment immediately. Carl was acutely aware of the fact that the manager and restaurant workers had no idea who he was or how influential he could be. He realized that walking around without his uniform would show him how people truly responded to him. He felt mistreated and upset, so he decided to take note of the situation and do something about it. He started to look around for witnesses who saw what had happened when he tried to order his meal. When he noticed that everyone around him was staring at him, he felt quite embarrassed. He didn't understand why the establishment had the audacity to mistreat him like this. At that point, Carl knew that there was really nothing left to be said anymore, and he decided to leave the establishment. He was angry, hurt, sad, and humiliated by the whole ordeal. That's when he hatched his plan. The next morning, Carl put on his uniform. Although he had many things that he needed to tend to, he also knew that confronting the people who had mistreated him the day before was also a main priority for him. After a call out, Carl decided it was time to go by the restaurant once again. After he pulled his cruiser into the parking lot and stepped out, everyone in the establishment was immediately aware of his presence. He got out of the car and walked in. Immediately, all of the staff members greeted Carl politely, even the waitress who had been so rude the day before. When she started to realize who he was, her smile began to fade and was replaced by a horrified look. It was finally time for Carl to face the rude manager. He asked the cashier to call for her manager again. He patiently waited for her to make her appearance, feeling in control of the situation, standing with one hand on his hip and another holding onto his radio. Carl's story of his mistreatment at the restaurant went completely viral. A representative from the restaurant did not even try to deny what happened. She said that everything Carl said was absolutely true. After the restaurant's representative learned about what had happened to Carl, it was clear that something had to be done to rectify the situation. What would the consequences be for his mistreatment? What would the restaurant do? The public's response was heavily in Carl's favor. One person said that he should have sued the restaurant for $150,000, which was the amount a gay couple was awarded by an Oregon bakery that refused to make them a wedding cake. The people in charge of the situation at the restaurant tried to reach out to Carl, but were not able to speak to him as of now. Regardless, the restaurant promised to look into exactly what happened and to take the appropriate next steps to help rectify the situation. Many people who heard this story were absolutely outraged. They were furious to hear about how the restaurant had treated Carl and believed that it could be considered a breach of customer rights. It seemed like everyone was on Carl's side, and they agreed that Carl had been a victim of discrimination. Carl's response was that he was never a fan of cancel culture. Additionally, he said he absolutely doesn't condone or support any criminal activity in response to what had happened to him. He also was against boycotting the establishment and felt that taking the high road was the best course of action. Facing a huge amount of criticism from the public, the restaurant decided to make an official announcement. The statement said that the staff's opinions and actions were absolutely inexcusable and did not reflect the restaurant's beliefs. The announcement also shared that the 2 employees involved in the situation had acted in an inexcusable manner and were terminated from their positions. The big problem here is that the restaurant only cared when they found out a police officer was mistreated while not wearing his uniform. They treated Carl really badly and didn't respect him. This makes us wonder, what if it was a regular person who faced this discrimination? Would they have fixed it the same way? If Carl wasn't a police officer, just a regular black man, would he have been treated the same? Carl used his power as a police officer to make the restaurant face consequences for treating a customer unfairly. The important thing to remember is that this kind of behavior shouldn't be ignored. It's not just about respecting police officers. It's about treating all people with respect, whether they have authority or not. Treating Carl poorly just because he seemed like anyone else was not right. We still have a long way to go to stop discrimination in society. Hopefully, with time and more understanding, we can reach a point where discrimination is gone, or at least not as big of a problem as it is today.